I'm in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and that is where I'm originally from. Like I grew up like in the suburbs, like 40 minutes outside the city. So this is where I'm from. And then I went to school at Penn State University, which is a big state school in my state. And it's like 40,000 students. I studied finance there, minored in accounting and entrepreneurship, graduated 2013, and then went into consulting for this company, Deloitte. So I was in a very corporate environment. And then I left that after a year and 3 months and I went to a tech startup in Philadelphia. So I moved into the actual city for that job,
Mm.
but had wanted to do this project and kind of create my own path in life. And I missed the sense of community that I had in college. So I wanted to recapture that. And that was kind of the basis for my project, which I started in November of 2015. And then 8 months later, the startup that I worked for was bought out. I was laid off and then I jumped into this full time. So this has been, yeah, I started it November 2015 and then took it full time just about 5 years ago. I think next week will be like officially 5 years since my full time.
Oh,
Uh,
nice. That's awesome.
yeah, so everything. And then I've lived like in the 5 years that I've done this full time, I spent a year and a half in LA over like a few different periods of time. I spent 9 months in Hoboken, New Jersey, which is right outside of New York City. And then I've been in Philly back and forth ever like in between every time. So yeah, I've been around and always just trying to find a way to push this forward and turn this into my career. And I've had partnerships in the past, but now it looks like
Mm.
speaking at universities, and that's a lot. Like I used to do 4 people a day, but now I've dropped down to
Mm.
3, and I
Mm.
use that extra time to reach out to universities
Mm.
to try to set up speaking gigs. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And what is the purpose of doing all that? Like what is it that you want to get out of the whole thing?
out of the project, or
Yeah, what the project?
I think from a personal standpoint, I have always loved meeting new people. So it's the thing that makes me happy because
Mm.
I feel like with every interaction, I'm gaining perspective. I'm gaining a greater sense of belonging. I learn a lot of anything from like a new mindset on life to a new movie or a new book or something like that. So I've always enjoyed that about connection. I think that was one
Mm.
of the things that specifically, I guess, the sense of belonging in college was really
Mm.
important to me. Like being surrounded by a community of people where you would run into people that you knew.
Mm.
That was kind of taken away when I graduated. So I wanted to
Mm.
build that back up. And
Yeah.
now I feel like I have it obviously on a much greater scale because I've met so
Yeah.
many more people.
Yeah.
But yeah, that. And then I think from outside of me perspective, like being a positive example of human connection for other people, because I think so often there's just like this person attacked this person or this person hates this person, and there's so much of that. And it's
Yeah.
I like being a counterbalance to that through my project and being like, hey, well, look at these 2 people from completely different backgrounds or races or religions, and they had a perfect conversation and they got along just fine with each other. So I like being that and inspiring other people to go on their journeys of connection, because I think
Mm.
then in their lives they'll capture that sense of belonging, they'll capture that perspective and whatnot. um, and eventually I want to have a course where students come together and pair off one-on-one and learn from each other's backgrounds in university as opposed to a textbook or a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And so I guess I want to be a facilitator of connection for other people as
Mm.
well, because I just think it's so, to me, it's like the most important thing in life. Like if you think about people who get sick and are dying or something, they're always like, oh, it's not, I don't wish that I spent more time at the office. I wish I spent more time with my family
Yeah.
or the people close to me. And it's like we can spend our time forming these connections and having a much more fulfilling life by feeling
Mm.
like we have these communities. So I want to help people do that.
And how do you make a living out of this?
In the pet, so
Because
have it like I,
yeah, because you said you left Deloitte to like it's like you left a corporate job
mhm,
to do this full time. So corporate job, you had money coming from the company. Now doing this full time, how do you sustain yourself?
right. So it, in the beginning, it was like I had my savings and I kind of saw that as
Mm.
my budget to get this off the ground. And
Mm.
the business strategy was very simple. It was don't run out of money. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I think with Instagram and stuff, I mean, it's
Mm.
changed now, obviously, but if you remember like 5 years ago, it seemed like people were able to have these big Instagram accounts and have all these partnerships with brands and stuff. And I
Mm.
kind of saw myself becoming one of those people. I never
Mm.
wanted to be like an influencer or anything
Mm.
like that. I didn't want to push products or anything through my page. But for example, I had a 9-month partnership with WeWork, the co-working space,
Yeah.
where their values are community and entrepreneurship. And it's like I am building this community of people and going on my own journey of entrepreneurship. So
Mm.
it lined up very well. And I did a 9-month partnership with them where they paid me to meet people at their locations one day out of every week. And
Mm.
I love that. It was like I was meeting people from the WeWork community who were all entrepreneurs in their own right. And the spaces, every time I would go to WeWork locations, it felt very much like a home. The greeters and everyone, those types of people really understood my project. So for me, that was a really nice partnership to have. And that was from June of 2019 to the week before everything shut down for the pandemic. Because
Yeah.
then I obviously couldn't go meeting people in WeWorks when
Yeah.
everything was shut down. But
Yeah.
that was part of it. And I think I've had smaller partnerships throughout the project, everything from like a dog walking company or a pharmacy giving me money to tag them in every post for the month and put presented this month by.
Mm.
Or in the pandemic, there were 2 months where I used another video platform called Tin Can instead of Zoom.
Mm.
And that's kind of more for connecting experts in fields with like their followers for paid chats.
Mm.
I wasn't using it that way, but I was giving him user feedback on the platform and whatnot.
Mm.
So things like that. But now it's really starting to move into public speaking because I feel confident enough in my story and the value that I
Mm.
could bring to a university
Mm.
to now be like, you should have me on campus speaking to your students because so many students are coming back after a year of social isolation.
Mm.
They may feel social anxiety. They may not have the right tools to connect with each other or the
Mm.
right confidence to connect with each other. So
Mm.
let me come in, tell them how I get to know people so easily, and give them the chance to practice this with each other so they can meet each other while I'm there.
Mm.
So that's my focus right now. And
Mm.
I have a goal to have 10 paid gigs booked by August 15th. And I'm doing well. We're getting like, I'm not at that goal yet, but I'm in conversation with a lot of universities.
Mm.
And the nice thing is similar to my project, right? Like in the beginning, I reached out to a bunch of people to ask if they would meet with me,
Mm.
and they did. And then it got to the point where other people were like, wait, what's this guy doing? I want to meet with him. So
Yeah.
I think the same thing will happen with public speaking, where it's going to be a lot of upfront work of me getting to that place of credibility of, hey, it is nice to have me on campus. And then
Mm.
eventually, once I have all these schools who've had me, others might reach out and be like, oh, well, you spoke there and did a really great job. So
Yeah.
we'd love to have you too. Or that's what,
Yeah.
so now I'm
Yeah.
kind of, when I left Deloitte and went to the tech startup, I was doing sales for them. So I'm just back in on the sales grind now,
Mm.
except this time I'm doing it solely for me as opposed
Mm.
to a commission from my
Yeah.
company.
Yeah. And why August 15 though? What's specific about August 15?
Nothing. I just a date that I could throw out
Yeah.
there because
Okay.
schools here start like I don't know August 20 something or whatever.
Mm.
Um, Even now, I feel like a lot of schools are planning like this week or last week or the next week. So I just want to have things set up before everything is in place at universities.
Yeah. So you said you want to like get more engaged in public speaking and you wanted to share more about tools, so some tools that you've learned and how to get people build confidence. So what is your
Mhm.
advice and what are the tools and how do you help someone become more confident?
I think the biggest thing and the thing I am talking about in these seminars, it's Ford method of conversation, which I didn't come up with. I only heard about it because I wrote a post in 2019, posted it to Reddit of how to meet 12 new people. And someone commented and said it reminded them of this Ford method. And it
Mm.
stands for family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And it's something, I guess, more and more I've thought of when I talk to people. Like, it's so easy to get to know someone within those categories. And the thing you need to know is, one, to keep that in your mind when getting to know people, and two, the right questions to ask within each category. And then also, the other big thing is knowing the answers for those questions in your own life. Because I talk to so many people where I'll chat with them and they give me like a bunch of different pieces of their life, but sometimes it's hard to understand because they don't do it in a way that makes sense. And if you know what your family dynamic is, if you know what your education and your occupation is, and you know what your free time activities outside of work are, and where you want to go in your life, it allows you to build like a really nice story of yourself in a chronological order. And I was just thinking of this last week, like, and I kind of want to do this when I have these seminars on campus. Like, in my mind, a good example of it is like trying to remember a sequence of 10 numbers. If I'm like, okay, remember this sequence, like 2, 7, 5, 9, 8, 1, 3, 10, and I tell you to repeat that, you're like, okay, what did he just say? But if I'm like, okay, remember this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I tell you to repeat that, no problem. Like, you're gonna be able to say it, no problem. So I want to teach kind of these categories and the questions within it to students so they can tell their stories in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 way.
Yeah, you know, I love that you mentioned this because so I studied industrial engineering with business and leadership, and I found myself so much driven in the leadership aspect. And I took a course in university, and it was talking about this. It was called the power of story. And at first I didn't get it because like I was in engineering at the University of Toronto and we're so like technical, and I didn't even think about me looking at my life, about reflecting. I'm like, what is this? I talk about my emotions. This is so weird. But then what they made us do is they kind of made us draw a timeline, and it was like the day you're born up until this present moment. And it's like recall. It's first started off with events and situations where okay, recall things that you remember so deeply, events that triggered you, that made you super happy, or events that got you to um, got you or really shaped you in a sense where they really bothered you so much. And slowly you start building up, you start recalling events, situations that make you even think deeper. I'm like, oh my god, okay, this event caused me to believe this about myself. Is this even true? And then subconsciously, I mean, I became really obsessed with like the mind and psychology and all of this. And it's like when I started to recall those memories, I'm like, okay, why do I even believe this about myself now? Is this even the truth? And I mean, I found that very interesting, honestly, this idea of timeline. So maybe that would work for you.
Yeah, it's funny. In my slides, I actually have a timeline
Yeah.
because that's how I used to say. And if you go back to that article that I wrote, like, I see people's lives as timelines. And that's why I'm like, you have like your childhood, you have your like schooling, you have where you are now, and you have your future. And I always, when I would meet people in person, would be like, hey, so like, did you grow up in the Philly area? Are you from here originally?
Yeah.
And if they're like, no, I'm from Toronto, then it's like, okay, birthplace Toronto. And then
Yeah.
there's a story of how they got to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Or if you're like, yeah, I'm from Philly, it's like, okay, birthplace Philly. Let's build it out then. And have you ever left? Or what, like, has your life in Philly been like?
Yeah.
So I very much think that way as well in terms of the timeline.
Yeah. And okay, so what is your word? I saw you were wearing the mind tent. Is it the mind
Oh,
tent?
this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's grow. So it says grow.
Oh, nice. Is this for the year? Or is it like is this your intention for this year or in general?
I actually, someone that I met through my project gave me this as
Oh,
a gift, like when we
yeah.
met. And I usually wear a watch on this hand.
Yeah.
And so I was like, cool. And I just kind of had it at my place
Yeah.
and would usually have a watch on. But then when the pandemic happened,
Yeah.
there was no need to have a watch on my hand. And
Yeah.
so I just put this on, and it's actually been really nice. I feel
Yeah.
like during the year of the pandemic, and now it feels like we're climbing out of that.
Mm.
Here, like especially for me in the Philly area, like I'm vaccinated, all of
Mm.
my friends and family are vaccinated, so I'm starting to see friends again. I'm going to the gym. It's like
Yeah.
it feels like life is normal.
Mm.
But over the last year, yeah, definitely, I was like,
Mm.
okay, growth.
Yeah.
This is definitely a year of growth for
Yeah.
all of us. So it was a really solid reminder.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like, it's funny how just having like a little word on a bracelet can make a big impact
Yeah.
on your life.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
And
Do you,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you wear one?
I got one for this year as well. But I got the necklace. And it had the word surrender.
Mm,
Yeah, and I just felt this year is like let's trust the process, like let's trust the flow. And it's like we're always trying to plan things, make things happen. And this year I was like, you know what, let's just surrender and
mm,
see, like let's trust the process, let's just trust the flow. Because I was always like trusting the flow, but then you want to start, like you have to, as you transition from just university to like starting work and looking for jobs, it's like, you know what, maybe I need to have a structure, I need to have something. And you have other people as well tell you you need to know where you're heading and you need to
mm.
have this. So at this point I was like, you know what, okay, I know I need to figure things out, but I know it's gonna come at the right time. And just like, I mean, that's all I could do at this moment. Like trust whatever I have in front of me, do the best that I can with what I have, and
Yeah,
then that's the best that I can do. So kind of living from that. That was kind of my
nice.
goal. Yeah.
That's cool.
And how have you grown this year? What kind of structure do you usually follow?
None. I just like this. It's very
Yeah.
similar to this of just getting to know people where, I mean, I'm curious what people's stories are, like their
Yeah.
background of where they've been, what they're doing,
Yeah.
and where they want to go. But yeah, it's just the flow of the conversation.
Yeah.
Sometimes with people who are shy, for example, will just
Yeah.
get stuck talking about a specific topic they're passionate about for like 45 minutes. But
Yeah.
in my mind, I try to build out as accurate as I can, like who is the person across from me,
Yeah.
because I want to feel like I know them when I leave. And I think for me, writing about people too, like
Yeah.
that is not so much the focus for me. For me, this is the focus of actually spending the time together.
Mm.
But I also am like, if I'm going to write about someone, I want to write an accurate
Yeah.
depiction of who they are so that they
Yeah.
feel when they go back and read it, they're like, oh, yeah, he actually did capture who I am. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, very naturally getting to know people.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what is an let's say what is one conversation that you had with someone which was like that triggered something in you or made you think a bit deeper?
I've had a lot of those. There was one, um, well, like I met a couple of girls in the past few months who were in their early 20s, and both of them have lost both of their parents already.
Oh,
So that made me think a lot because I'm
oh,
30. I still have both my parents. Like they're happy, healthy, together.
mm,
They're, um, my mom is 69. My dad will be 70 this week.
mm,
So I think just it, talking to other people like that has made me realize the finiteness of life, and
mm,
something like the fact of me having my parents' presence is a gift. And
mm,
same with my friends and my siblings. Like those
mm,
people aren't always promised to be with you throughout the entirety of your life. And it's
mm,
kind of sad to think about because you're like, I have these gifts that I really enjoy that
mm,
someday are going to go away.
mm,
And it's like you can't change that fact. You
mm.
can only change how much you appreciate them while you still have them. So
Yeah,
talking to people like that has really increased the or my appreciation for like my own loved ones.
yeah,
But yeah, and you were talking about growth before I was going into our how you found me, but I used to meet every person in person, like 3,259 people, met all of them in person, and then the
oh,
pandemic hit, so then I went virtual. Like it was the first time I ever did a virtual call.
mm,
So I think I grew a lot over the last year from talking to people outside of the US and hearing about like what the pandemic is like in Panama or
yeah,
Pakistan or Germany or whatever.
yeah,
That was really interesting, and just understanding like what protests were going on in countries,
mm,
protests about things that we don't hear about here in the States because we have so much of our own stuff. going on. But yeah, I feel like I grew a lot that way. And then throughout the project, like hearing stories like those people, I've always grown in my gratitude and just my understanding of
Yeah.
challenges that other people have to go through that I've been fortunate enough to
Yeah.
avoid for whatever reason.
And did you record your conversations that you had with individuals like when you were doing it in person?
No, it was just we would just chill, and then a stranger would take a photo of us together,
Yeah.
and I would write whatever I remembered of their story.
Yeah.
But I became a really good listener because of that. Like I would have to pay attention to everything that people were telling me, because even like quotes and stuff, if I would throw in a quote, I was like, okay, well, you have to find a way to remember this.
Yeah.
And if I heard something that stuck out to me, like I would try to remember that throughout the conversation
Mm.
while still having the conversation.
Yeah.
And yeah, so which is interesting because now I like having like a little minute clip to post of everyone.
Mm.
So
But
when I
but
go
sorry, go ahead, sorry.
when I go back to in person, I think I will like it just because now I'll just pick a clip that represents someone authentically, but I can't record the whole conversation in person with my iPhone.
Yeah.
So I might just be like, oh, this was a cool thing. Can you tell me about that again? And I'll
Yeah.
post that. So
Yeah. You're having in-person conversations. Did you actually like take some notes? Because I sometimes like for me, I notice in my podcast, it's like I love what people are sharing, and sometimes it's like there's so much information, right? And you want to recall things, you want to keep the conversation going, right? How was your what technique did you have that kept you going or recalling what the other person was saying?
I didn't take notes at all because I like, you know how I sent that thing like PSA, I'm not interviewing people. Like I
Mm,
always was just like, what, I'm not here to interview you or like
yeah,
write about you. I'm here to get to know you.
yeah,
And then like if you were I feel like dating is probably the closest example that you could use. Like
yeah.
consider it like platonic dating, but like you wouldn't go to a date and take notes on the person. Like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
there to get to know them. And
Okay,
there are certain things that stick out that you'll remember and whatnot.
okay.
And you're thinking about them. But yeah, I would just try to just sit and get to know people. And I think in terms of recalling it, it goes back
Yeah.
to that timeline. And
Mm,
that's how if I could build someone's timeline out in my mind, then
yeah,
I could start to put their life into that 1 through 10
yeah,
sequence. And that made it a lot easier for
yeah,
me to recall. Um, yeah, I guess details, like I don't know, I think I just have a good memory when it comes to like what someone studied and what university, and I
yeah,
could kind of just like start to build all of these things out into my mind and to kind of go through their story in my mind. So it's almost like when you watch a movie and then you can retell the story of that movie.
yeah,
I was just watching the story of these people's lives and then retelling it right afterwards.
yeah. Do you immediately like write what you recall, or do you keep it until the
Yeah,
next day?
I'll always so for and now it's like the time. So I met someone at 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. today.
Yeah.
Are you in Toronto right now?
No, I'm currently in Dubai.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, so I met someone at 8 a.m. my time till 9, and then we started chatting at 10. So from 9 a.m. till 10 a.m., I wrote her story. I put our picture together. I got a clip from her. I put that clip through TikTok to get captions, screen recorded it,
Yeah,
edited it, posted it. So everything is right after. And it's also because I meet so many people so often that there's no time period where I can let it build up and then post. It's
yeah,
like in order to keep up with the pace at which I'm meeting people, I have to post right away.
yeah,
Yeah, which also helps for like, but even back then, like there would be some times where I wouldn't get someone's story out in time before I met the next person,
mm,
and then you're trying to remember two stories at once and separate
yeah,
the details and whatnot.
yeah.
So yeah, always like right after.
100%. Okay, so wait, just going back just to look at your story as well. Um, you finished, you graduated, you worked in Deloitte. Why did you choose to leave Deloitte?
I left Deloitte because I had heard of this tech startup in Philadelphia. It was called RJ Metrics, and it was a data analytics startup. So I minored in entrepreneurship, and I kind of felt
Yeah.
like being at Deloitte, I wasn't really happy with my life there. Like
Yeah.
I felt like I was going 40 miles. You know how on golf carts they like put a governor on it so like it can only go a certain mile per hour,
Yeah. Yeah.
even though it could go faster. I felt
Yeah.
like that was me at Deloitte. Like I was only allowed to go 25 miles an hour when I felt like I could go 100. And
Ooh.
I was like, I'm stuck here formatting PowerPoint slides and taking notes on calls and formatting Excel sheets, which
Mm.
I know is like what people in my role do at the firm. But I
Mm.
also see people my age in San Francisco running their own companies,
Mm.
making millions of dollars. And I just feel like I have the same potential as those people. I'm just
Mm.
not in that place. So
Mm.
I my mindset towards Deloitte was like I wasn't seeking to leave the firm. I knew it was a really good place to
Mm.
be.
Yeah.
But if an opportunity came up, I wasn't gonna pass that up. So an opportunity came up to join this tech startup
Mm.
in Philly that had 24 million in
Mm.
funding, and they were a data analytics company.
Mm.
And at the time, all the partners at Deloitte were talking about this product called Tableau, which
Mm.
was like so much better at visualizing data than Excel was.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, if the partners at Deloitte are really excited about this,
Yeah.
and this business is doing it for small to mid-sized businesses, it seems like they're
Mm.
in a really good field.
Mm.
And I was just excited to join. I was like their 80th employee, and
Mm.
that was a lot more fun because it was like if you had an idea, you had the freedom to explore that.
Yes.
And where at Deloitte, it was like if the logo was one like millimeter off on this slide as where it was on the previous slide, like you
Yeah.
would get killed for that. They'd be like,
Yeah.
I really appreciate it because it teaches you
Yeah.
attention to detail.
Yeah.
But in the startup world, they were like, we don't have time to care about that. Like, we're trying
Yeah.
to survive and we're trying to grow by 10 times. So the things that we're worried about are the higher value actions.
Yeah.
And I liked that type of environment
Yeah.
where it was like you're just like focused on the big things. And I'm very much that way. Like
Yeah.
big thing, 10,000 people. Details, we'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. But then you left Deloitte, you went to the startup, startup got bought, and
Mhm.
then you decided to just do this full time, right?
Mhm.
So moving on forward, you're like, okay, I want to do more like speaking engagement, going to university. But as a long term, like your vision towards that, what like when you reach the 10K, then what?
Mhm. I think once I reach 10K, I continue speaking. I think that's something I'll do
Mm.
uh, as like throughout my career because
Mm.
I think I'll always have the story and I'll always have the lessons from my project and they'll always be applicable.
Mm.
The other thing is I want to have that university course where students are
Mm.
pairing off one on
Yeah.
one, and I want to teach that at one university. I want it to do well there, and then I want to help other universities
Mm.
have their own teachers do it there because
Mm.
I think it's really important for students to have that. And I just don't see that now. I don't
Mm.
see like there might be a university that has like this different class where it's focused on, for example, Yale has the science of well-being,
Mm.
and it's become really popular in the past couple of years, and they opened it up for like people across the world to join for free. They can like go self-navigate it.
Mm.
Um, but it blows my mind that universities don't have an active way of teaching one-on-one conversation to their students and
Mm.
encouraging them to connect with each other. It's like, yes, you have clubs and activities, but someone who's really shy and not proactive about connection is not going to take advantage of that.
Mm.
But if you give them a space where you're like, hey, this is a time for you to come in not feeling confident about your conversational skills, and we'll teach you that, and we'll give you this very laid back
Mm.
environment to learn it, then they might be a little bit more interested in doing that. Or
Mm.
I think it should be required. But even then, it's like, I think a lot of the value in university is the connections that you
Mm.
form there. And I think
Mm.
universities are missing out on a lot of
Mm.
value by not facilitating that connection between
Mm.
their students. And I
Mm.
don't see it in
Yeah.
places right now. So I'm like, it
Yeah.
needs to happen and I will be the person to do it.
Yeah.
And then I just want to have like a wife and kids and have a just a laid back life. Like it's not in my mind, it's not that I'm doing the 10,000 to then do something bigger. It's
Mm,
like I'm doing this because I think it's a really cool journey that I'll
mm,
go on, and I think it
mm,
will lead to like this nice arc of settling into like teaching about it
mm,
afterwards and
mm.
just living a very balanced life.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're talking about this, it took me back to like I remember a course that I did, which is also in leadership. Like I think I loved leadership the most.
Mhm.
And our professor, we had a professor who forced people to stand up and talk. Like if someone wanted to answer, they have to stand up so the whole class can see them, and then
Mm,
answer that. So you're put on the spot, so people get shy and like they're not confident enough to do it, but he forces them to do it. And I remember at first I was that too. I was like, oh my god, like why do I need to stand up? Like I can just answer when sitting down. But I started to notice it builds confidence, like it really
mm,
does, which is amazing. And what he also did too, but I did like we didn't know why he was doing all this, but then eventually by the end of the course we're like, oh my god, that's actually the difference. Um, but another thing that he did was if people used to answer a lot, he was like, yeah, you know what? Enough answering. Let's give a chance for other people to do that. And then he would pick on them. So like no one can run away from this class. You're gonna have to talk. And
mm,
definitely like you see the difference and and how people's confidence and them being open to like have some mistakes, like mess up, and that to be okay, which is amazing. And another thing too is that professor got us to do like the different kind of tests where you get the chance to know about yourself. Like, are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? And the more awareness you get to that, it's not that you want to label yourself, but you're more aware of
mm,
where on the spectrum or where do you find yourself more driven towards. And let's say you're an introvert, for example, you're like, okay, I like to spend my quiet time, but at the same time I can challenge myself to go and speak to people. So
mm.
this awareness I found very very exciting to have in a course. And I think that's something maybe that you can resonate with as well
Yeah,
in terms of yeah.
yeah, no, I think that's really important. Yeah, one, to
Yeah.
have that, build that confidence, and two, to have
Yeah.
the awareness too. And I think that's kind of why it goes back to like having the answers to those questions within those categories about our
Yeah.
lives. Like the more aware we are of ourselves, the more confident we come off, because we're
Yeah.
like, this is my story, this is who I am. And if
100%.
someone's like, oh well, I don't know like this about me or this, or I don't know, I can just tell you from being on the side of someone who's listened to 4,400 people almost, the people who clearly and concisely know their stories come off as very confident.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So I got a few like last two questions for you.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
So when I ask you like Rob, like who are you? How would you define yourself? Because I've noticed that you've been like really diving deep into understanding yourself, your story, and who you
Mhm.
are. So when someone asks you, Rob, like describe yourself in like 3 words.
Mm.
Who are you?
In 3 words,
Or yeah, like in whatever way you want to. If there's three
okay.
words, it's easier for you, then go ahead. If you have like longer story, go ahead as
Mhm.
well.
Well, I'll say in 3 words, like empathetic, curious, and adventurous. I feel like empathy is like the desire to understand people, and like not so I don't care to judge the people that I meet with. It's more so I'm
Yeah,
just there to acknowledge them. And then
yeah,
the curiosity, yeah, is like what's out there in the world. And then the adventure, same thing. It's like that's another big reason why I'm doing this project, is because when you're trying to meet 10,000 people and you're trying to find a way to make it work, it becomes one big adventure. And that to me is a much more fun life to live than being at a 9 to 5 and running the same reports every month and doing same
yeah,
emails and meetings and stuff. And like, I don't want my life to be that. I want it to be
yeah,
something that's constantly like doors are opening and then I'm going into a new place.
yeah,
So those are the 3 words, but I would say my life is like, I ask people, which I'll ask you too, is like, if your life is a pie chart or your identity was a pie chart, what would be the categories that make up who you are, and what are the percentages? And for me, it's like 60% this project, which, and this is really breaking how I spend my time.
mm,
60% the project, and that's getting to know new people,
mm,
satisfying a desire for entrepreneurship, seeing new places, trying new things, And then outside of that, 20% friends and family, quality time with them. I'm the youngest of three siblings. Like I said, my parents are still together. I have a nephew who's 11 months old. So those are all really big pieces of my life, and my friends I'm very close with. So that's where I get my fulfillment from, is from that side of things. And then 10% music. I have two guitars. I took lessons in high school for 2 years. I don't really play now, but it's something that I always want to go back to. But I
Yeah.
love listening to music. And then 5% fitness. I try to go to the gym 3 days a week. And then 5% reading, like trying to
Yeah.
read an hour before bed every night. And that is pretty much me, like broken down into
Yeah.
categories.
Interesting. I never thought of like splitting it up in like a pie chart and percentages. That's pretty cool. Um, the final question: what is your definition of success?
Mm, yeah, it's a good question. My I think my current definition of success is getting the like basics of life through my own work as opposed to something else. Like I don't I don't care to be famous or anything like that. I don't care to have nice cars or a mansion. I want to have like a house like the one that I grew up in. I want to have a wife and kids. I want them to have the freedom to explore their own passions, but I want to do it through my own work as opposed to trading my time for money at a company. And I think now getting public speaking feels a lot like my own work. Like I am excited to go to university and teach people about connection. And I having these few things set up already, it's like, oh, this is really interesting because I feel like I have that control now. And if I could
Yeah.
set up 20 gigs or 20 per semester or something like that, then I have the time to explore whatever, and maybe the money issue of life becomes solved through that, and then it's like just meeting people, or it's having an impact in whatever way I want. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's for me, success is having those, I guess from a career standpoint, getting the necessities of life through my own type of work. But then I think from a life standpoint, it's having really good relationships and having an appreciation for them, because
Yeah.
yeah, I think my greatest accomplishment in life is the people that I've been able to surround myself with. So that is really important to me. And I think that basis allows you to do other things. Like I have the confidence to pursue a project like this and put myself out in this like weird space because I have a really good support system. And I don't really have to worry about what other people think, because I know the
Yeah.
people that are close to me think what I'm doing is cool, and that's
Yeah.
enough for me. So I think that's really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Rob, for your time. Like for me, that's kind of like towards the end of the episode. So thank you everyone for listening to this episode, and I hope you have an amazing, awesome rest of your day.